Ever feel like you're just going through the motions? A tiny cog in a giant machine?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're putting in the effort. But the rewards just don't seem to add up today. We're going to unpack that feeling. We're taking a deep dive into the concept of societal systems and how they shape our lives, from the jobs we do to the products we buy, and even the beliefs we hold.
It's about recognizing those invisible forces that influence our choices, our opportunities, even our sense of self.
And to guide our deep dive, we've got this insightful article from toolthinker.com called Are You Someone Else's System Input? It's provocative, right? But the idea is that many of us are essentially inputs into these larger systems, feeding them our time, energy, even our data. So how do we go from passive input to active influencer? That's our mission today.
And the article provides us with some powerful tools to do just that. It introduces the concept of framework thinking, which you can think of as a mental toolkit for understanding and influencing the systems around us.
I love that, a mental toolkit, because once you see how these systems work, you can start to play the game a bit more strategically.
Exactly. And to illustrate how these systems operate, the article dives into 3 key areas: the global capitalist economy, the education system, and healthcare.
Okay, so let's start with the global capitalist economy. The article uses multinational corporations as an example, highlighting how wealth and power often get concentrated at the top. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because while these corporations rely on the labor of their workers, the rewards don't always flow back down in a proportionate way. We see this in stagnant wages, limited upward mobility for many employees, and a growing gap between the haves and the have-nots.
It's like we're all putting in the effort to keep the machine running.
Yeah.
But the benefits are being siphoned off somewhere else.
The article uses the example of shareholder structures, where profits are primarily distributed to executives and shareholders, leaving many workers feeling like they're just cogs in the machine, contributing to a system that doesn't necessarily benefit them in return.
It's almost like the system itself is designed to create that disparity, right? That's a pretty sobering thought. But the article doesn't just leave us with this bleak picture. It introduces us to these frameworks for understanding and potentially even influencing these systems. Yeah. It's like saying, okay, now that you see the game, here's how you can start playing it more effectively.
Exactly. It's about moving from feeling powerless to feeling empowered. And one of the key frameworks they highlight is the SWOT analysis. Now, you've probably heard of SWOT analysis in a business context, but the article argues that it can be applied to any system, even our personal lives.
Okay, so remind us, what does SWOT stand for?
It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a way to analyze a situation from multiple angles.
So how can we use SWOT analysis to understand our role within a system, like the global capitalist economy we were just talking about?
Think of it as a personal inventory. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What opportunities exist within your current work environment? And what are the potential threats? Let's say your strength is your ability to collaborate and build relationships, and you see an opportunity to join a committee that's advocating for better employee benefits. But you also recognize that a potential threat is resistance from management, who are primarily focused on cutting costs.
So by doing a SWOT analysis, you're not just blindly complaining about the system, you're strategically identifying where you have leverage and how you could use your strengths to potentially make a difference.
Precisely. It's about being strategic and understanding the playing field. Now, another system the article explores is the education system.
Right, and they use the term factory model to describe how standardized testing often takes center stage. What's the problem with that?
Well, the article argues that this emphasis on standardized testing can lead to a one-size-fits-all approach to education. Schools might prioritize uniformity over individual learning, shaping students to fit the system, rather than encouraging them to reach their unique potential.
It's almost like students become products to be standardized, rather than individuals to be nurtured.
The article makes the point that this approach can stifle creativity and discourage students from exploring their passions. They might feel pressured to conform rather than to excel in areas where they truly shine.
So if we apply the SWOT analysis here, a student's strength might be their creativity, but the standardized testing environment could be seen as a threat to their individuality.
Exactly. And the opportunity might lie in finding alternative learning environments or extracurricular activities that allow them to express themselves more fully.
This is so insightful. It's like taking a tool that we usually apply to businesses and using it to understand our own personal experiences within these larger systems. Okay, so we've talked about the economy and education. What's the third system the article digs into?
The third system is healthcare. And here the article focuses on how profit-driven models can sometimes prioritize treatments over preventative care.
Oh, this one hits close to home. It's like the system is more focused on fixing you after you're already broken than keeping you healthy in the first place.
That's the point the article is trying to make. It argues that the focus on generating revenue from procedures can sometimes overshadow the importance of preventative measures and overall well-being.
And they use the example of insurance-driven healthcare to illustrate this. Explain that a bit more for our listener.
Sure. In insurance-driven systems, there's often an emphasis on treating illnesses rather than preventing them. It can sometimes feel like patients are reduced to cases to be managed, rather than individuals with unique needs and concerns.
So it's like the system incentivizes treating the symptoms, rather than addressing the root causes of health issues.
Right. And this can lead to a cycle of recurring health problems that could potentially have been avoided with a more preventative approach.
Okay, so we've seen how these systems can sometimes work against us. But this is where it gets really interesting. The article doesn't just leave us there. It gives us these frameworks, like SWOT analysis, to help us understand our position within the system.
And not just understand it, but potentially influence it. Remember those leverage points we talked about? SWOT analysis can help you find them.
Right. It's like finding those pressure points where you can apply your strengths and take advantage of opportunities to create change.
And the article introduces another framework that can be really helpful here. Porter's 5 forces.
Ooh, now this one sounds a little more complex. Tell us more.
It can seem complex at first, but it's really quite intuitive.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Porter's 5 forces was originally developed for business analysis, but it can be applied to understand the power dynamics within any system.
So how does it work? What are these 5 forces?
Let's break it down. The first force is the bargaining power of suppliers. Think about who controls the essential resources within a system.
So in a workplace,
Yeah.
the suppliers would be the employers, right? They control wages, benefits, and working conditions.
Exactly. They hold a lot of the cards. The second force is the bargaining power of buyers. This is about who has control over the outputs or the demand side.
Okay, so in the education system, while students are often seen as the customers, it's really the institutions that have more control over the learning process
Yeah.
and what's being taught.
You got it. It's not always a straightforward customer-business relationship. The third force is the threat of new entrants. This looks at how easy or difficult it is for new players to enter the system.
So in healthcare, for example, regulations and licensing requirements can make it very difficult for new providers to enter the market. That limits competition and gives existing providers more power.
Precisely. The fourth force is the threat of substitutes. Are there alternative options that could fulfill the same purpose?
So like telehealth services could be seen as a substitute for traditional in-person doctor visits.
Yes, that's a good example. And finally, the fifth force is competitive rivalry. This looks at the intensity of competition within the system.
So in the business world, this would be like Coke versus Pepsi, constantly battling it out for market share.
Exactly. By understanding these 5 forces, we can start to see the power dynamics within a system more clearly.
It's like getting a peek behind the curtain and seeing who's really pulling the strings. And once you understand those dynamics, you can start to strategize more effectively.
Right. You can identify where you have leverage, where you might need to build alliances, and how you can position yourself to make a difference.
This is so empowering. It's like we're taking back control. Instead of feeling helpless, we're becoming active players in the game.
And remember, the goal isn't just to analyze these systems. It's to figure out how we can move from being passive inputs to becoming active influencers.
And the article gives us some practical steps to make that happen.
Right. Absolutely. It emphasizes the importance of identifying those leverage points within a system. Those are the areas where even small changes can have a significant impact.
Okay, so it's like finding those pressure points where a little bit of effort can create a ripple effect.
Exactly. And the article uses the example of a workplace setting. Let's say you're passionate about improving employee well-being.
But you're just one person. How do you even begin to make a difference?
Well, you could start by identifying those leverage points. Maybe there's a committee that's responsible for employee benefits, or perhaps there's a key decision maker who's open to new ideas.
So it's about strategically positioning yourself.
Right.
To have the most impact?
Precisely. It's about understanding where you can exert influence, and then using that knowledge effectively once you've identified those leverage points. The next step is to develop a strategic plan.
Okay, so we're not just randomly pushing buttons here. We need a roadmap.
Exactly. And that's where those frameworks we discussed earlier come in handy. Remember SWOT analysis and Porter's 5 forces?
Of course. We can use them to guide our planning process.
Right. With SWOT, you can set clear goals based on your strengths and the opportunities you've identified. Let's say you've discovered a weakness in a company policy, but you also see an opportunity for improvement.
So maybe the company isn't doing enough to promote work-life balance, but there's a growing awareness of the importance of employee well-being.
You could use your SWOT analysis to craft a proposal. That highlights how changing that policy aligns with both organizational goals and employee well-being.
I love how this gives us a framework for not just identifying problems, but also proposing solutions.
And then there's Porter's 5 forces. Understanding the power dynamics within a system can help you tailor your approach when advocating for change. If you know who holds the most influence, you can craft your message to resonate with them specifically.
It's like having a secret weapon. We're not just blindly throwing ideas out there. We're being strategic and targeting our efforts for maximum impact.
Exactly. Now, the article also stresses the importance of building relationships and alliances.
Oh, absolutely. There's strength in numbers.
Right. Right. Systems are made up of people, and creating change often requires collaboration.
It's about finding your tribe.
Oh.
And working together to make a difference.
Absolutely. And they give a great example of how this can work in the education system. Imagine you're a teacher who wants more flexibility in curriculum choices.
That's a common issue, right? Teachers often feel constrained by standardized testing requirements and rigid curriculum frameworks.
Right. So if you want to advocate for more flexibility, you could team up with other teachers who feel the same way and form a coalition to advocate for a curriculum review.
Or you could join committees
Yeah.
that have decision-making power over the curriculum.
Exactly. It's about finding those allies who share your vision and working together to amplify your voice.
Now, the article also talks about adopting a continuous improvement mindset. What does that mean exactly?
It's the idea that small, consistent changes can lead to significant progress over time.
I love this. It's a reminder that we don't need to solve everything at once. Small steps, consistently applied, can create big change over time.
They use the example of a corporate environment that prioritizes profit over employee well-being. If you want to create a more positive and supportive workplace culture, you might start with small initiatives like organizing short wellness sessions or creating a suggestion box for workplace improvements.
So it's about starting somewhere, even if it seems small, and then building on those successes.
Exactly. And as you implement these changes, it's crucial to document your progress and use those successes as evidence to advocate for further improvements.
It's like building a case, step by step, showing how even small changes can have a positive ripple effect. Now, the article's final point is all about education and empowerment.
Yes, and this is crucial for creating lasting change. The more people understand how systems work and how they can influence them, the more likely we are to see systemic shifts toward fairness, transparency, and inclusivity.
The more people understand how systems work, the more we can collectively shape them for the better.
The article suggests hosting workshops, facilitating discussions, or providing resources on framework thinking and systems analysis to help spread awareness and empower others to take action.
So it's about paying it forward, equipping others with the tools and knowledge they need to become active influencers in their own right.
Exactly. And they give a powerful example of how this can work in a school setting. Imagine a teacher who introduces students to the concept of systems thinking.
Wow, that's inspiring. Starting young and nurturing that awareness can create a ripple effect that extends far beyond the classroom.
Absolutely. It's about planting seeds of change and empowering individuals to become active participants in shaping the systems that shape their lives.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into systems thinking. It's so easy to feel like we're just cogs in the machine. But this article gives us hope.
It reminds us that we all have the power to move beyond passive participation and become active influencers.
And by using frameworks like SWOT analysis and Porter's 5 forces, we can gain a deeper understanding of these systems and identify those leverage points where our efforts can make the biggest difference.
It all starts with awareness, understanding, and a willingness to engage. And with the right tools and a collaborative spirit, we can create systems that are more equitable, sustainable, and beneficial for everyone.
This has been an incredible conversation, but before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with something to ponder.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What is it?
Think about the systems you're part of. Work, education, healthcare, even your social circles. Where do you see those leverage points? What small actions could you take today to start creating a ripple effect? The powerful question. It challenges us to move beyond just understanding these systems to actually doing something about them.
Yeah, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of these systems. But the beauty of framework thinking is that it breaks down these complex challenges into manageable steps.
Right. It's like instead of trying to move a mountain, we're focusing on finding the right lever and applying the right pressure.
And that's where individual action comes in. Each of us has the power to make a difference, no matter how small.
One thing that really struck me from the article was the emphasis on sharing knowledge and empowering others. The more people understand these concepts, the more we can collectively advocate for positive change.
Absolutely. It's not just about individual action. It's about creating a ripple effect. The article gives the example of a teacher introducing systems thinking to their students. Imagine the impact of equipping young minds with these tools early on.
Wow. That's a powerful image. It's about fostering a generation that's not just aware of these systems, but also empowered to question them and work towards making them more just and equitable.
Precisely. And it's not just limited to classrooms. We can all play a role in spreading awareness, whether it's having conversations with friends and family, sharing resources on social media, or even just being more mindful of how systems influence our daily lives.
It's about changing the conversation.
Right.
Shifting from complaining about the system to actively analyzing it and
Yeah.
brainstorming ways to improve it.
Exactly. And remember, even small actions can have a significant impact, especially when we coordinate our efforts.
That's so encouraging. It means that even if we don't have a lot of power or influence individually, we can still make a difference by working together.
Absolutely. Collective action is key to driving systemic change. It's about finding common ground, building alliances, and leveraging our collective strengths to push for a better future.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listener with a challenge. Don't just exist within these systems, engage with them.
Analyze them, question them, and most importantly, work towards shaping them for the better.
Until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep.